I think we can make a start while we wait for more people to join. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angel. I'm an immigration solicitor at Lee's Law. And today I'll be delivering a webinar on how to hire employees from abroad, a session designed for UK employers ready to navigate immigration with confidence. So to give you a brief introduction about myself, I completed my Bachelor's of Law in 2018, followed by the legal practice course and an LLM in the following year. I went on to complete the professional skills course in 2022 and then subsequently qualified as a solicitor. I advise on both personal and corporate immigration matters with a particular focus on sponsor license applications, skilled worker visa applications, sponsor license, compliance visits, etc. And I also handle a range of personal immigration cases, including family visas, applications for indefinite leave to remain, British citizenship applications, among others. So Lee's Law Solicitors was established in 2012 and has since grown into a dynamic legal practice offering services in various areas, such as immigration, conveyancing, commercial law, and more. We have achieved a ranking from Legal 500 from the Legal 500 for the personal immigration category, putting us among a group of top law firms nationwide. As we work with clients both across the UK and internationally, our multilingual team of solicitors is equipped to serve a diverse clientele, speaking a range of languages, including English, Mandarin, Cantonese, Malay, Italian, and others. So I'll now begin the webinar, and thank you all for joining, and let's get started. So following the publication of the immigration white paper in May and the release of a significant statement of changes on Tuesday, the skilled worker route is set to become considerably more complex and restricted. A number of confirmed, expected, and proposed changes will reshape the sponsorship landscape for employers and applicants alike. So on the screen here, you can see a summary of the key developments. So there are major changes taking effect from the 22nd of this month, including salary threshold increases. So for instance, the general salary threshold for the skilled worker route will rise from £38,700 to £41,700 per annum. And for new entrants, the threshold will increase from £39,660 to £33,400. And there's also the job skills level requirement that's been reverted back to RQF level 6. This eligibility criteria will be tightened, requiring roles to meet RQF level 6. And according to the explanatory memorandum, this may remove approximately 180 roles from sponsorship eligibility. However, the Home Office press release suggests 111 occupations will be affected. But this discrepancy should be clarified once the full rules are released. And transitional arrangements will apply for existing workers enrolled below RQF level 6, although these are temporary and will be subject to review. And then moving on, there's also the changes to the shortage occupation list. So 2 new lists will be introduced. The first being an expanded immigration salary list. The second being the temporary shortage list, which is aligned with the UK's modern industrial strategy and set to be phased out by the end of 2026. New applicants under either list will not be permitted to bring dependents. However, those already on the skilled worker route will retain this right. And at last, the other main change that will be implemented on the 22nd would be the closure of the care worker route to overseas applicants. So new entry clearance applications for care workers and senior care workers from overseas will no longer be accepted. A transitional period from the 22nd of July until the 22nd of July 2028 will apply to in-country applications by workers already employed by licensed healthcare providers. So then there are also expected changes by the end of this year. There will be the increase to the immigration skills charge, likely by 32% based on the white paper that was published in May, and also an increase in the English language requirement across the immigration system. And at last, there is also the proposed change that was also reflected in the white paper that was published in May, which is the extension of the qualifying period for settlement, which is indefinitely to remain under the skilled worker route from 5 years to 10 years. So there's no doubt that these developments mark a significant shift in the UK's immigration policy, with an emphasis on reducing net migration and raising the bar for sponsorship. So therefore, we strongly recommend that employers and prospective skilled worker applicants to seek legal advice and assign certificate sponsorship before the 22nd of July of this year to ensure that they all fall under the current and more favorable rules. So let's talk about the agenda and what I'm going to cover in this webinar. So during this session, I'm going to cover 5 key parts. The first part being the benefits of hiring international employees. The second part being the skilled worker route overview. The third part being the fees and timeline. The fourth part being the common challenges and practical solutions. And the final part would be how Lisa's Law can support you at every step. There will also be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar where I will be able to answer any questions you may have. So hiring international employees under the UK skilled worker route can offer a range of strategic and operational benefits to employers. And here are some key advantages. The first one would be an access to a wider talent pool. This route basically enables UK employers to recruit from a global pool of talent, addressing skills shortages that may not be met locally. This is especially valuable in sectors with chronic shortages such as healthcare, tech, engineering, hospitality, and education. Saying that, it's worth noting that the Home Office will end overseas recruitment for care workers on the 22nd of July, as I mentioned earlier. So once implemented, care providers will no longer be permitted to hire from overseas, but there will be a transitional arrangement for those already on a care worker visa up until 2028 to make any further applications under this route, as mentioned earlier. The second would be to fill skill gaps with qualified professionals. Skilled worker applicants must meet minimum skill, salary, and English language requirements, meaning that employers can be assured of a certain standard of qualification and experience. It's an effective route for roles requiring specialized knowledge or niche expertise. A third advantage would be long-term employment stability, because the skilled worker visa can be granted for up to 5 years and is extendable, offering continuity and stability in the workforce. And employees on this route can progress towards settlement, meaning indefinitely to remain after 5 years, encouraging loyalty and long-term retention. However, it's worth noting that the Home Office may extend the qualifying period for settlement to 10 years based on the white paper that was published in May. The fourth advantage would be enhancing diversity and innovation. International hires bring fresh perspectives, global insights, and varied cultural experiences, all of which can drive creativity and innovation. A diverse workforce can also enhance a company's brand image, making it more attractive to international partners and customers. There's also the competitive advantage in global markets. Hiring multilingual or internationally experienced staff can help companies expand into new markets, communicate better with global clients, and understand international consumer trends. So the last advantage would probably be the flexibility and workforce planning. The skilled worker is not limited to shortage occupations. Any eligible role meeting the requirements can be filled, providing strategic flexibility in the workforce, planning and scaling operations. However, it's worth noting that the Home Office will expand the current immigration salary list, create a new temporary shortage list, and remove around 180 different jobs eligible for sponsorship as they lift the threshold back to graduate level or above. So moving on, I'm going to talk about the skilled worker route in stages. To sponsor migrant workers under the skilled worker route, the UK company must first obtain a skilled worker sponsor license, which is valid for as long as the company continues to meet the eligibility requirements. And the application would involve three things: an application form, an online application form, a detailed covering letter explaining the business and reasons for applying, and at least 4 supporting documents demonstrating the company is genuine and operating in the UK. But bear in mind that the Home Office may conduct compliance visits to assess whether the business has the required HR systems in place. So stage 1, the sponsor license application. The first part we're going to talk about would be the key personnel requirements. So the company must nominate the following roles. The first one being authorizing officer, short for AO, a senior UK-based personnel responsible for recruitment. This person must be a settled person and free from unspent convictions. So it could be settled or a British person. A level 1 user who handles daily sponsorship management tasks, short for SMS, usually the authorizing officer, but an alternative employee or legal representative can be an additional level 1 user. The key contact would be the main Home Office contact, which could be a legal representative as well. So for example, if a company wants to instruct us as the legal representative, we can be the key contact to facilitate easier correspondence with the Home Office. And then there's also a level 2 user, which is optional. But this level 2 user only has limited SMS access for simple tasks. It's worth noting that the authorizing officer must be a UK resident worker, employee, or office holder, and cannot be a contractor or relative of the migrant unless an alternative level 1 user is appointed. And there must be an authorizing officer whilst the license is valid. The second thing we want to talk about is the genuine and available vacancy. The business must demonstrate that there's a genuine vacancy, not created for immigration purposes. There are accurate and detailed job descriptions, and then a physical office premises is required as the Home Office may reasonably believe that the migrant in question could work remotely from their home country if there isn't a physical premises. And also recruitment records. There's immigration rules called Appendix A that list out what kind of recruitment records the company should retain for the purpose of being a sponsor. The third part would be field level requirements. At the moment, based on the current rules, the jobs must be at RQF level 3 or above, meaning A-level equivalent. But it's worth noting that, as mentioned earlier, the threshold will raise to RQF level 6 or above, meaning graduate level or above, based on the new statement of changes, but there will be transitional arrangements available for those already enrolled before RQF level 6. Each job corresponds to a standard occupational classification code, short for SOC. So then there's also the salary requirements based on the current rules. For new skilled worker visa applicants from the 4th of April 2024, the general salary threshold is £38,700 per year, or the going rate for the stock code, whichever is higher. Exceptions from £39.60 may apply in limited cases, for example, for new entrants or shortage roads, for example. And for existing skilled workers, meaning for those extending their visas with the same employer, or change of employment, meaning they want to switch to another employer to be sponsored, the transition threshold of £29,000 per year or the lower going rate applies, whichever is higher. And in limited circumstances, some roles and migrants may be eligible for sponsorship from £25,000 per year. So just bear in mind that all the annual salaries are based on the 37.5-hour working week, and they must be prorated for other working patterns. So, for example, if someone works for 40 hours per week instead of 37.5 hours per week, this will need to be prorated, and the minimum salary will be higher in that case based on the hourly rate. So you may wonder, what documents are the Home Office expecting to see with the online license application and cover letter? Here, we have summarized some key documents that could be submitted. There are the mandatory documents, as we mentioned earlier. There is a registration with government body. This is required if your company is required to be registered with a regulatory body in order to operate. This is not the company's house incorporation, but a registration specific to your industry. For instance, with a food business, the Home Office would expect to see scores on the doors rating or registration with a local authority. There's also the audited annual account. This is required if the company is legally obliged to submit audited accounts. The accountant who prepared the accounts must be a member of an accredited accounting body. And then there are also other documents to complete a set of full core documents. There is the latest company bank statement with an appropriately regulated bank. This one is required if the company has been operating or trading for less than 18 months, meaning that this company is a startup company. There's also the employee's liability insurance certificate, the PAYE registration letter, which is for the payroll, the VAT certificate. This is required for those reaching the threshold, the turnover threshold of 90K based on the current rules. However, it would be good to provide if the company is planning to reach this threshold anytime soon. And there's also the proof of ownership or signed lease agreement of the office premises. As I mentioned earlier, as best practice, is always good for a company to have this lease or title register for the physical premises of the company, because otherwise the Home Office could suspect that this role is not genuine. This person could actually work remotely from overseas without being physically in the UK. And then the last thing would be latest CT 600 tax return together with the latest CT 603 notice. So this would prove that the company has a certain turnover and should be operating and trading already. But there are also more documents that is listed on Appendix A, but we have listed the key documents that a company would usually provide when it comes to submitting a sponsor license application. In addition, the company will need to inform the Home Office of its structure, the detailed job description, the job role to be opened, and documents of the intended migrant if the company has already identified one. As best practice, we would also advise the company to retain right to work checks conducted, a detailed HR policy, and evidence of a workplace pension scheme in case the Home Office requests to have a compliance visit. So moving on, let's talk about stage 2, which is the certificate of sponsorship. Each sponsor employee must be assigned a cost of certificate of sponsorship. This is essentially a unique reference number which is given to a migrant to employ them or continue employing them. There are two types of costs. The first type is defined cost for those applying from outside of the UK. The second type is the undefined cost, which is for applicants already inside the UK. The company will need to pay £525 when assigning a cost to a worker. It's important to know that Level 1 users cannot assign a cost to a close relative. You would also usually need to pay the immigration skills charge unless an exemption applies. For instance, where a company is sponsoring someone with a certain occupation code, or the intended migrant is currently on a student visa. The amount payable would depend on your company size and also the duration of sponsorship. So this is the final stage, skilled worker visa application. Once the employer has a skilled worker sponsor license and assigns the cost to a migrant worker, the visa process can begin. So to qualify, there are some requirements. The migrants must hold a valid immigration status if applying from inside the UK, meaning not as a visitor, short-term student, or leave outside the immigration rules, etc. Second of all, if the migrant is on a student visa, they must have completed their course or will complete it before their course start date, or be studying a PhD and applying after 24 months from the course start date. It's also important to note that this intended migrant should have no serious immigration or criminal history, and they should have a genuine job offer at the right skill and salary level. They should also meet the English language requirement of CEFR level B1 in speaking, listening, reading, and writing, unless they're exempt. So, for example, if they are from a majority English-speaking country, etc. They should also show financial maintenance. So if the migrant is in the UK for at least 12 months with no extended periods outside the UK, then no proof is needed because they will automatically meet the financial requirements. But if they have been in the UK for less than 12 months, or they're applying from abroad, then they must show £1,270 of funds held for 28 days, or have maintenance certified by the sponsor, meaning that the sponsor, the company, can actually certify the maintenance on the cost. So this would save them from providing their own bank statements. And if the bank statements are generated from a country that generates statements that's not in English, then they will have to be accompanied by certified translations, and that would cost more time. So let's talk about, dependents and other requirements for skilled worker visa applications. So with dependents, eligible partners such as spouse, civil partners, and married partners, and also children under 18 may apply as dependents, but obviously extra financial evidence may be needed if maintenance is not certified on the cost. There's also tuberculosis screening. This is required if the migrant or migrants, including dependents, are applying from countries on the UK's tuberculosis list, meaning that this only applies to out-of-country applications. So I will now move on to talk about the application process. If someone's applying from outside of the UK, they must apply from their home country or country of residence. They need to complete an online form and attend a biometric appointment, or they may use the mobile app if they're EU nationals in the EU. And the document submission method depends on the location because certain countries may not have an online portal to submit documents to. So for those applying from inside the UK, they would have to submit application and upload documents online, and they might need to attend a biometric appointment at a TLS contact center, or if eligible, they can apply via a mobile app and skip the in-person appointment. So possible outcomes. If the application is approved, the visa will be granted for a duration of the course, meaning up to 5 years. Extension is possible with a new course, and after 5 years, they will be eligible for indefinite leave to remain if there are no more than 180 days absence in any 12-month period, and employment is still needed for the foreseeable future, and the person has passed the English language requirement B1 and 4 components, the Life in the UK test, and children would qualify if both parents are settled or the parent who's settled has sole responsibility. After holding indefinite leave to remain for 12 months, applicants may qualify to naturalize as British citizens. Nevertheless, it's worth noting that the 5-year qualifying period for settlement may extend to 10 years based on the immigration policy paper published in May. If the application is received, there's no right of appeal, but administrative review may be possible if a case working error is identified. Next, we're going to go through the applicable fees and timeline for each process. So with a sponsor license application, the Home Office application fee at the moment is £574 for small or charitable sponsors, or £1,579 for medium or large sponsors. It's important to note that this must be paid by the company and must not be later recouped from the intended migrant. So you may wonder, what's a small sponsor? You're usually a small sponsor if at least 2 of the following bullet points apply. So the first being your annual turnover is £15 million or less, the second being your total assets are worth £7.5 million or less, or you have 50 employees or fewer. The processing timeframe is the standard timeframe is up to 8 weeks, but this could be expedited to within 2 weeks if the company opts for a priority service at an additional £500. So this is subject to availability. However, please note that should the Home Office request to have a compliance check with a company's authorizing officer, the priority service will not be refunded. And it's usually the case that both the priority and standard timelines would not be met. Then let's talk about the cost request and assignment. The fine costs must be requested directly from the Home Office as needed and are assessed on a case-by-case basis. These requests are usually processed within 1 working day, but this may be delayed if the Home Office requests additional information and documents. Undefined costs, on the other hand, can be requested with the license application, and the allocation is then valid for 12 months. And then throughout the validity of the license, you can renew or increase this allocation based on the company's needs. Such requests could take up to 18 weeks to process. If urgently required, we would advise you to secure the priority service at an additional £200, so the request could be processed within 5 working days instead. But again, the priority service is subject to availability, and it might be more challenging to do so in the current period because the rules are about to change on the 22nd of July. So when the relevant cost is allocated, the cost can be assigned with immediate effect. It must be assigned within 3 months preceding the submission of a skilled worker visa application. And as mentioned earlier, the cost assignment fee of £525 and immigration skills charge, where applicable, will need to be paid upon the assignment of the cost. For small or charitable sponsors, the immigration skills charge will be £364 per year of cost. For medium or large sponsors, this will be £1,000 per year of cost. But it's again worth noting that the immigration skills charge would likely increase by 32% by the end of this year, based on the recently published white paper and the press release published on Tuesday. Again, the cost and immigration skills charge must be paid by the sponsoring company, not the migrant. The company is prohibited from recouping such fees from the sponsored workers. If the company attempts to do so, it could risk having their sponsor license revoked. So let's then talk about the skilled worker visa application. For applications made outside the UK, it could take up to 3 weeks to be processed from the date biometrics are given. However, this could be expedited to 5 working days at an additional £500, subject to availability at a country of application. Whereas for applications made from within the UK, it could take up to 8 weeks to be processed from the date biometrics are given. However, again, this can be expedited to 5 working days at an additional £500 or to 2 working days and an additional £1,000, subject to availability. So here on the screen, you can see the applicable fees based on the current fee structure. So as you can see here, it depends on how long you're going to sponsor the workers for and what kind of roles they are. And also the immigration skills charge, again, the priority service would depend on whether or not the role is urgently required, whether this person is needed immediately to start working, for example. So now let's talk about common challenges and practical solutions when navigating the skilled worker sponsor license and visa process. First of all, let's talk about common challenges for a skilled worker sponsor license and how to tackle them. The first one would probably be incomplete and inconsistent documentation. The challenge here would be missing or inconsistent information in supporting documents. So the solution here would be, if we're instructed, we can cross-check your documents against the relevant Home Office guidance before submission to prevent the sponsor license application from being rejected or refused. So there's a distinction here. With home office license application being rejected, there is no cooling off period and you can apply right after because usually it's due to missing documents. If the application is refused, usually there would be a cooling off period. But again, the cooling off period will be stated in the letter, in the refusal letter. Second of all, there will be genuine vacancy concerns. So the challenge here is that the Home Office may suspect that the job is not genuine or it was tailored to suit the migrant. The solution here would be it's always best practice to have evidence of recruitment properly documented. And in addition, if we're instructed, we'll review the job description for the role in question and advise you on the most appropriate job code and the applicable minimum salary. The third common challenge would be a lack of appropriate HR system. The challenge here is failing the pre-license compliance visit due to poor HR processes. So the solution here is, as mentioned earlier, we would advise the company to retain right to work checks conducted and a detailed HR policy in case the Home Office requested a compliance visit. Regardless of whether the Home Office requested a compliance visit, it would be advisable to do mock audits with an immigration specialist like us as a precaution, just in case. The last one we could think of would probably be slow response to additional information requests. The challenge here is delayed or missed responses to Home Office inquiry. The solution here is to monitor emails daily and assign multiple level 1 users to ensure one can always access the SMS if needed. This would be especially helpful if the authorizing officer is the sole level 1 user, goes on annual leave, and there is an urgent Home Office deadline to meet. But moving on, let's talk about common challenges for a skilled worker visa application and how to tackle them. The first one would probably be incorrect cost details. The challenge here is that when a sponsor tried to request a cost or assign a cost themselves, there could be errors in the salary, the weekly working hours, or the job code, and this could lead to a refusal of the cost request. So the solution here is to ensure alignment with the actual employment contract. And if we're instructed, we can, of course, double check the cost entry, especially the stock code, the salary, and the employment date. Second of all, salary threshold confusion. The challenge here is uncertainty about how reduced salary thresholds apply. The solution here is to check a migrant's immigration history, and we can advise you on the applicable salary threshold if instructed. The third one would be delays in visa processing. The challenge here is that visas not issued in time due to processing delays or missing documents. The solution here is we'll probably use priority service where applicable and track the timelines carefully. Make sure that the intended migrant you want to sponsor can actually start work at the date you want them to start work. The last challenge here will probably be the right to work. Employers are unsure when a migrant can legally start work. The solution here is to check the migrant's right to work online using their share code, as biometric residence cards or permits are no longer accepted. So to sum up, we have provided some practical tips for you on the screen, and this includes keep everything documented from recruitment process, from recruitment note to visa correspondence, to stay updated, read sponsor license updates regularly, and then also prepare for compliance. Even after the license is granted, the company could be subjected to unannounced audits. So be prepared and always arrange mock audits with immigration specialists. The last thing would be to train your HR team and ensure key personnel understand reporting duties and SMS functionality. So how can Lisa's Law help? Provided that you meet the requisite requirements for each stage, we are here to guide you at every stage. Our services would include the following, including document checklists tailored to your application, applicable templates for the application, advice on the sufficiency of the documents and information you provide, completion of application forms relevant to your application, full accompanying legal representation, documents upload if it's applicable, and liaison with you, the Home Office, and any relevant third parties throughout the entire application process. And in the event that the Home Office requests to have a compliance visit with the company's authorizing officer and asks to see additional information and documents, we can assist the company in advising on the requested additional documents and conduct mock audits with the company with practice questions. But this would be at an additional fee. Ultimately, the outcome of the license application would be dependent on the responses provided by the authorizing officer during the actual compliance visit. If you wish to have additional support for a peace of mind, or you wish to sponsor a close relative, we can also act as an additional level 1 user to manage your company's sponsorship management system, the SMS, once the license is granted, for a yearly retainer fee. This would cover services like monitoring sponsored workers' visa expiry, ILR, meaning indefinitely to remain eligibility, annual course allocation requests, SMS reports, etc. So on the screen, you can see the different ways to contact us through our social media platforms. Feel free to follow us for updates, news, and insights on immigration and other areas of law we specialize in. We're always happy to connect and answer any questions you may have.